And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pumpkin Copter Cast, a good old podcast about video games. Today I'm joined by two people, my two hostages, guests who are here of their own free will. I'm here with my regular video game news talkabouter, Ben.
Hi.
And I'm here with Big Al Dente of Nobi Noodle and Ultimate Mobile Gaming Truck, one of the greatest things to say ever.
I have returned once again. Thank you for having me.
So, today spring is getting in full swing and everything's starting to come back to life, so it doesn't look like death has spread across the land.
Speak for yourself. My allergies are destroying me.
Yeah.
You too?
Those came back to life real quick, and they're like, hey, buddy, how's your spring? And I'm like, fuck off.
Oh, God. Yeah, I'm the same way. My pollen allergies, it's never been fatal, but every time people say, oh, you're such a buzzkill, why do you hate spring? And I'm like, I have really bad allergies. I have an excuse to be grouchy.
Oh, dude, I love spring, but I gotta drive in that nonsense. Drive in that video game truck when the pollen's everywhere, and you're just like, hey, kids, how's it going? You're just...
Oh, God.
You nut up or you shut up real quick.
Good thing I gave up allergies as my New Year's resolution.
Is that all it takes? Well, Jesus. Why did I have to go for something as pedantic as staying in shape? Who does that anymore?
So
Anyway, I digress.
Yep. So, well, even if not everyone feels it, the world around us is certainly looking a bit happier, and I don't know. Springtime makes me happy, and when I am happy, I think about some of my favorite video games that I grew up with since I was a lad. And so today, in between just incoherent ramblings of madmen, each of us are going to, or at least give our darndest, like 5 video games that got us into video games in the first place. Because if there's one thing that there's not enough of, it's people who grew up in the generation of video games talking about video games from back in their day.
There we
True.
go.
So, let's see. I guess I'll start things off and...
It is your podcast.
Yep. So to the -7 people listening, my list isn't necessarily in order, it's just in the order that I can remember them. Because my mind is just a tornado of madness all the time. So, let's see. One of the first games that got me into video games was way back in the day when the N64 was considered a hot new thing, and it was the first Paper Mario. Now, this was the first Mario RPG that I got a chance to play all the way through, because back in the day when my brother had the SNES and played through Super Mario RPG, I didn't really understand what it was, because I was like, why is Mario standing across the room beating up some tiny guy? But it got its hooks in me just because it's so gosh darn cartoony. I mean, it was... this Super Mario RPG aside, while the stories in the Mario RPGs aren't exactly the deepest, it was a story. It was one of the first times that Nintendo attempted to give attempted some type of storytelling in the Mario universe, and my favorite part, as I'm sure most everyone's is, was the partners, all of the crazy partners Mario had in the first game, and I'm gonna be honest, it took me many, many years to realize the origin of his first partner, Goombario's name. Just 9-year-old me through 15-year-old me didn't quite connect at, oh, Goomba, Mario, Goombario, what? So, and
Those names are so similar, though.
I know. That was just me not being able to connect things.
It just
And
seems so far fetched to think a Goomba would be able to do what Mario can do. So it's okay. I don't fault you there.
Yeah.
it
I mean,
was,
if you think about it, it almost seems like a bit of a paradox. I mean, it's a Goomba being able to do the same things that have been known to kill it. It's like that Far Side comic. I forget which one specifically, but it's the one of an image of a cow like grilling burgers on a grill, and you're just thinking, like, oh my god, how is this? It's a paradox, is what it is. If you think about it too hard.
yeah.
If you can't beat them, join them.
It was also the first video game to genuinely scare me. Well, yeah, 9-year-old me. Back in the third chapter, when you have to help out an entire mansion of spooky ghosts, and you have to travel through that spooky forest that drives you around in circles, and for some reason the flowers are talking, and not even Goombario, who has a dictionary size, who has an encyclopedic, found the word, knowledge of it, doesn't seem to know what's going on, and I'm like, why are the flowers smiling when I'm walking by? And just, but still, and the RPG mechanics were great. It was just, I just love the fact that it combined an actual good, well-designed game with a goofy cartoon aesthetic, which is one of the things I love to death about Nintendo.
If smiling flowers spook you out, I would suggest against playing Undertale. Just a
Uh,
heads up.
It's a little late for us.
Yep, ship has sailed.
Yeah,
Oh,
we've both done a pacifist run on that one.
Doesn't
And
make it any less creepy. In fact, it makes it more creepy.
yeah, and without wishing to spoil it for the, -7 who haven't played it, let's just say, at least in my experience, I couldn't bring myself to do a genocide run. I actually tried, but I just broke down in tears. It was just too much. I couldn't process it.
was a great game.
Yeah,
That it
Jeff
was.
feels, man.
That's indeedy dandy. So, I don't know. So since this is structured to my demented whims, I guess I'll pass it off to, let's see, Eeny Meeny Ben. What is your number 5 game that got you to fall in love with video games?
Well, I didn't really give a lot of thought or structure to this when I was putting together my notes. So I
Doesn't
thought
matter.
about it as being nostalgic in the sense that what was a game I played that really made me gain an appreciation for a certain genre, publisher, or developer. And just to keep things in the same spirit of the cartoony RPG motif, and since I've been catching up on it recently, I would have to say a game that's always been very nostalgic for me has been Kingdom Hearts. I say that for the whole series, but I've got a wicked soft spot for the first one in particular. The day I got that weird Disney Square Enix RPG thing at a KB Toys back in 2002 was one of the few days seared into my memory. Now, like a lot of people, I was aware Final Fantasy had existed, but my frame of reference was mostly the Disney brand, the nostalgia with the videotapes, the sing-along songs, and it was like with Tyler and the Mario RPG thing. I remember seeing that, and I was curious how it would work. And I didn't think it would, just because, well, just say that out loud. It's an RPG with Disney characters. Does that even make a single lick of sense?
Nope.
And yet, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't something that stuck with me all this time. Even now, I've been playing through the HD collections on PS4, and it's held up remarkably well from like a gameplay perspective. It's very cathartic, just bashing people with a giant key. And Yeah, there's a lot of convoluted junk with the plot, but again, it's hard not to appreciate a game series where there's a pivotal plot point that takes place inside the world of Tron, as in the actual computer world of Tron. And it was a first for me in a lot of ways. It was my first proper experience with an action RPG and JRPG mechanics. It was the first time I ever felt, genuine emotion with a licensed game because, a lot of them were basically garbage. And it was also the first time I remember legitimately raging at something. My 10-year-old self was traumatized by Hollow Bastion in the same way my 25-year-old self was traumatized by Ornstein and Smough in Dark Souls. Yeah, just laugh at that. Laugh at my pain and suffering.
As I always do.
I wish I could. Unfortunately, I'm also one of those strange folk who've never played a Dark Souls game, so I'll just pretend you were talking about Bloodborne and, let that go.
Yeah, I've also played Bloodborne. I've beaten it 4 times, so I know what you're talking about.
Oh, jeez.
I climbed a ladder and then I died, and that's pretty much where my experience with Bloodborne ends. So it was a fun game. It was a nice looking ladder. It's a real dystopian future looking ladder. It was good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would you say is your number 5 game that made you fall in love with video games, Mr. Big Al Dente?
All right, so I'm gonna take a different spin on it. So when you had said 5 games, I was like, well, I mean, there are plenty of games, so I'm gonna take it.
Number.
I'm gonna take it all the way back to the beginning. The reason I game in the first place is because my parents didn't always have time for me back in the day, so they're like, "Yo, we bought you this Sega Genesis and some game about the hedgehog. There you go, have at it." And it was Sonic the Hedgehog 3. And I'm like, why is the red hedgehog so evil? And who is this fox kid? And then I discovered my sister could play as the fox kid. So we just kind of sat down and we played Sonic when we had some free time in between homework and not wanting to go to bed. It was a good time. It was good stuff. It kind of made me want to see what else the wide world of gaming had to offer. Humble beginnings. That's where it all started. I can't say I'm a big fan of Sonic anymore, but everybody's got to start somewhere. So if it weren't for Sonic the Hedgehog, Mr. Go Fast Furry himself, I don't think I'd be doing half of the things that I've been doing today. There you go. There's number 5.
So thank you, Jaleel White.
Funny you mentioned that. That's basically my own personal story of how I got into gaming too, and I am more or less in the exact same boat. I cannot tell you how strange it was reading that they're going to start including original characters in Sonic Forces. That is just...
So if you haven't listened to the most recent episode of our podcast, Otaku, we got into that, and I've had enough of opening Pandora's box for the DeviantArt Sonic fans. I'm just you keep that in your pocket, just nice tucked away, safe and sound. May it never see the light of day again. Nope. Go play Sonic Mania. You heard it right here. Sonic Mania, the officially endorsed Sonic the Hedgehog game from Nobi Noodle. Yes, sir. Right. Sonic Mania.
Right. I apologize if I accidentally triggered anyone by mentioning that.
You're triggered. That's no good.
And he said
deserve that.
So, my number 4, well, this isn't... This is not really nostalgic since it's only a few years ago, but I don't know. It's nostalgic in that it got me to appreciate the franchise as a whole, and I'm talking about way back in internet years to the debut of Pokemon X and Y, and Pokemon X specifically. Now, I've been drip-fed the Pokemon cartoons ever since I was a youngin'. I remember my brother had a copy of Pokemon Red. I remember very bitterly once he tricked me into trading my freaking super strong Tentacruel for a Caterpie. Ugh, so just bitterness. But up up until I bought Pokemon X when it launched, Pokemon never really clicked with me as a franchise, just for whatever reason. Before then, the other Pokemon games I played during high school when I was going through high school things. But I don't know, just something about it. Since Pokemon X seemed to just exude newness, or even if it's the same tried and true Pokemon formula, they added so much to it. The 3D visuals that have since become a standard, being able seeing every single solitary Pokemon 3D and animated, and it's beautiful. And the whole new type, the fairy type, which allows you to absolutely wreck shop when you go up against a dragon. And the Mega Evolutions, which basically turned the Pokemon into superhero animals. And it was and the plot, like all of the Pokemon plots, is incredibly cheesy. But gosh darn it, it's Pokemon, and they present it with such sincerity that you just can't help but fall in love with it. I mean, it was the first Pokemon game. I'm not gonna, even though it's quite a bit old and quite a few people have, several million people, in fact, have played it already. I don't want to give it away, but the ending, I genuinely felt myself being moved because, since they had a whole new engine to work with and all the characters were rendered as 3D images, they were really able to convey emotion. And gosh darn it, it just hit me right in the chest. And when I played through it a second time out, I didn't think it would affect me that much. But I'm like, my goodness, I almost forgot what it's like to have feelings when I'm playing a video game. And ever since that day, I have been slowly conquering all the other regions in the Pokemon world, and am currently getting close to the end of Pokemon Sun, which I have loved. So, yep. So, in summary, Pokemon X is the game that got me to fall in love with the Pokemon franchise, and because of that particular game and the region it takes place in, the very French-inspired Kalos will always have a special place in my heart. So, yeah, that's my number 4.
This is a good Pokemon pick there.
Yep.
I came for X and Y's story, but Gold and Silver is always going to be number 1 for me, I think, in terms of sheer monster collecting.
Yep.
But
Nintendo
X and Y's...
port Gold and Silver to the 3DS. Oh, sorry, what was that?
That would be good.
So
No, they're too busy giving us stars on Switch. No worries. You'll have that to tie you over.
So, smooth transition. What's your number 4, Ben?
Well, my number 4 has a good amount involved with dealing with hazardous environments, even if it has nothing to do remotely with Pokemon. Specifically, I tend to be very nostalgic about a game you actually introduced me to back when it first came out, namely Spelunky on the Xbox 360.
Oh,
I fondly
Spelunky.
remember you trying to get me hooked on that little procedurally generated, brutally difficult platformer. We played a few co-op sessions at your place, and I didn't really like it at first. It was hard for me to understand how you could have a difficult platformer that was randomly generated. You have to understand, my frame of reference at the time was Super Meat Boy, which was also brutally difficult, but there was a certain fixed structure to the levels. You could eventually do it through trial and error. How could you possibly have that level of precision when the level changes itself every time? But then when I got it on my PS3 a bit later and I tried it on my own, which, pro tip, never do co-op roguelikes. Those things are just going to end horribly. Something in my mind clicked, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the Tetris mentality. And I love Tetris. It's this idea that everything is a quasi-random puzzle, and you have to adapt to the elements constantly. It's a case where the more familiar you are through repeated deaths, you gain a certain level of experience, and you know how to work around it in the same way you work around the different pieces in Tetris. You play it enough times, and the next thing you know, you're going to end up just getting 4 rows cleared every time across the board. And I'm always going to have respect for that game and Derek Yu for opening my eyes to that.
So there we go. Ben's number 4, Spelunky. Buy it. So, moving on, yet another smooth transition that I am known for. What's your number 4, Mr. Al Dente?
I just want to give you props for that sweet, sweet advertisement right there that you just did. Spelunky, buy it. Short, sweet, to the point. Just 10 out of 10. You can't really get much more direct than that. And if that doesn't say what you should be doing right now with your time and your money, then I don't know what does. No, who knows anymore. Spelunky, buy it. Yeah, just this game is sponsored by the Pumpkin Copter podcast. Go ahead, play it. So number 4.
Not actually sponsored. Please don't sue me.
Oh my god! To put that in the description for the video. No, please. I have no way endorsed with Spelunky. Anyway, so number 4. Where I'm just chronologically going back in time to games, and this is where I would put Super Smash Brothers, because I do love me some crossovers. Crossovers just let my mind wander. What ifs? Those are some of my favorite things in games. But Smash Brothers was not my original number 4 super much enjoyed crossover game. It was actually a little handheld game by the name of Wario Blast featuring Bomberman on the Game Boy. Way back in the day, friend, cousin, I can't remember who it was, let me borrow this on a road trip we were going to, and I'm like, well, why the gosh darn is Wario trying to blow up the Bomberman? I don't get it. What did he do to Wario? There's absolutely no story whatsoever. It's just, hey, it's Wario. Hey, it's Bomberman. Let's blow each other up. Why not? It gave me the link cable because you could play that with a friend. Just like, who plays Pokemon? Play Wario Blast featuring Bomberman. And oddly enough, I had friends who would link up and play with me. And it was just this weird, quirky little game. And they all made weird faces. And it just kind of made me want to explore games a little more. It's like, all right, well, if Bomberman and Wario are hanging out, who else is hanging out? Mario and Sonic going to hang out? Or Tetris Block going to hang out with Puyo Puyo? And then all these things eventually happened. And again, it's that what if, the who's hanging out with who, that random who knows what's going to happen next when it comes to gaming is what keeps me sticking around, because you never know. You never know what's going to happen. You never know who's going to show up on whose doorstep. So there's you go. There's your number 4 for me.
So, moving on to my number 3, this will come probably as no surprise to anyone anywhere with good taste in video games, but the N64 was known for a small game that some of us might have played a few times back in the heyday, a small indie game known as Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. A game that since then has been declared by many sources the world over as one of the greatest games ever made ever, and if you disagree, no offense, but you are objectively wrong.
Majora's Mask.
What was that?
Bite your tongue.
Delicious.
Ew.
So,
No.
But, yeah, much like a lot of other people growing up, Ocarina of Time was...
Ha! I got you doing it. It's only a matter of time before I change everybody else's mind. Anyway, continue.
That's one. But, yeah. Ocarina of Time, it was the first Zelda game I've ever played, and before then I literally didn't know what the Zelda franchise was, like, at all. And, it was all sorts of things, from the time you get to choose your own name and everyone addresses it to you, to, talking with Tree Grandpa that very first time, to the still creeps me out to this very day, the time when you go deep in his tree guts and beat up that spider one-eyed thing, and just like now that I'm able to look at it, like, both as an adult and through the much more graphically superior 3DS port. The thing just like looks like it should not exist. It's just one of those things that it's like a child's drawing of a spider. You know, they understand what a spider is, but when you look at it, you realize it shouldn't be able to support its own body, and just it creeped me out. And it wasn't actually until like, decades later that I was able to buy it and beat it on my own through the 3DS port, which and it's just to this day it's still just an epic story. It starts out as one kid in a literal and figurative treehouse, and it turns into this huge epic adventure where you fight a parasite infecting a tree grandpa, blow up a lizard who's eating all these rocks for a bunch of boulder people, fight some type of what I can only describe as some type of mutant tapeworm and some type of god whale and get engaged to a fish woman. And,
fish wife.
And just... I remember beating it. I remember I think 3 or 4 years ago, beating it on my own for the first time since I was a kid, and back even now, it still got me. It's so good, and like the music is still to this day so very catchy, and I could go on talking about only that for hours, but I'm not going to, because then we'd probably never leave. But, Ocarina of Time, it's the best version of it is on the 3DS. Buy it. So, yep. I'm glad I got two people who speak much more eloquently than me on this podcast, too. So... Yep, that's my number 3. Ben, on to you.
My number 3 is, believe it or not, the first time I remember getting really curious about the Mario brand and that whole universe. You'd think that it would be Mario 64, which I do have fond memories of, but in reality, it was Mario Kart 64. I vividly remember... I think it was when I was around 6 or 7. I was with my sister at her friend Jocelyn's house, and everyone was just hunkered down in front of their Nintendo 64, going the rounds on DK's Jungle Raceway. I vividly remember because that was the moment when I got into it. I really enjoyed it, and next thing you know, I was walking out of the local Toys R Us with a Nintendo 64, and a lifelong fanaticism began from the Nintendo 64 all the way up through to, well, I would say all the way up through to the Switch, but I haven't got my hands on it yet. I will at some point. It's been a very interesting relationship with that brand. A lot of highs, a lot of lows. Water temple! Ugh, excuse me. I got a little stuck in my throat.
You gotta be careful.
Yeah, like I said, very interesting relationship with Nintendo these days.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad I've had the opportunity in the end.
Yep. So, always good to get an unexpected one on the list. So, on to number 3 with Big Al Dente.
Oh, snap. Going chronologically again, because I think it's working for me. I skipped the World of Warcraft phase. I skipped all that crazy MMORPG up to a point. I had a friend over freshman year in high school come on over at some point, and I was like, yeah, dude, bring your games. And he lunchbox handled his GameCube over, and he's like, here, I brought 2 copies of this game, and we're going to play it. And I'm like, what's this game, and why do you have 2 copies? Surely it cannot be that good. And it was Phantasy Star Online. At the time, I did not have the means to play this game online, but it was about as an online MMORPG as I was ever going to get, because I felt like it was going to start and end with this game. I put so many hours and so many sleepless nights and so many forgotten pieces of homework into this game that it was almost a sin. And many, many times would we have Friday night after school parties where we would LAN cable GameCubes together. It just became this net of Nintendo frownery playing this one game. Four people to one TV in one room, four people to a TV in another room, just questing for red boxes and finding some rare loot and killing some boomas. The story wasn't even that great. It was actually quite garbage, but you just get attached to yourself and your friends and the stories that you build together. It's just very hard to put that game and that experience down. So I have yet to experience a game quite like it. I don't know if I will ever find that magic again. Like again, it's pretty much a one and done. But when I think MMOs and I think games I can play with friends online that have anything to do with RPGs, I sit there and I think, is it going to be as good as Phantasy Star Online? And if the answer is no, I usually don't put much stock into it. So we'll see what the future brings. I know there have been more Phantasy Star games since then, but it's just not the same, man. Just not the same. But yeah, there you go. That's my number 3. Phantasy Star Online, Nintendo GameCube. Episode 1 and 2 plus. Hard game to find. If you can find it, give it a shot. Grab some friends, some popcorn. Good time.
So, for my number 2, I was probably going to list another Nintendo game since I was raised in a primarily Nintendo household before I was able to get a job and actually buy things on my own. But just to break up, even though I love Nintendo, there are other companies that I have come to adore, and one of the companies that I adore is the one that produced what can only be described as the masterpiece of first-person shooters, and I am talking about the little gem that deserved to get more love, damn it, and that is Bulletstorm. It is, since, gosh, I think it's been 6 years since it came out, I think.
Yeah,
Golly, I'm old.
it came out in 2011, and for those who don't know, it was also re-released by Gearbox. They got the publishing rights, and it's now available on current-gen systems as a full clip edition, which it's a little pricey, but if you can wait for it to go down, Tyler and I, we can tell you firsthand, it is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I'd easily rate it as one of my favorite shooters of the previous generation, which, considering we've also played BioShock, is really saying something.
Yep.
Featuring Duke Nukem.
Yep,
I didn't say it was perfect.
Yep. Actually, I heard, the company that was put in charge, since I guess People Can Fly went under or separated or got bought, or I don't know. I don't keep up.
They got bought out by Epic Games.
Yeah, that thing Ben said. Like, apparently people weren't too happy that Duke Nukem was, I think held behind a pre-order wall or as a $5 DLC, and from what I can understand from video game news talkabouters who are smarter than me, Mr. St. John, while always awesome, may have possibly phoned in his lines just a bit. But anyway, back on to why I love Bulletstorm so gosh darn much is because for those of you who don't know, and if you don't know Bulletstorm, what's wrong with you? It is freaking nuts. Well, for one, it's Steve Bloom, which is always a plus, as the space pirate Grayson Hunt, and I'm not going to get into the plot because it would ruin your chance to experience all the jokes for yourself, but he's stranded on this planet and has to use various ridiculous types of gun in order to kill enemies in ways that are as ridiculous as the guns, in order to earn points, in order to buy gear so that you can, survive and escape the planet full of crazy things. And when I say that the guns are ridiculous, I mean it. There's your standard gun, the Peacemaker carbine. You could just charge. You can unlock a charge feature as with all the guns, and when you shoot someone with the carbine, they pretty much just turn into a smoldering skeleton. With the super duper pistol, can't remember the name because remembering names is for jerks. You charge that up and it basically turns into a super firecracker that launches someone into the air and then it explodes. And my personal favorite, the quadruple barreled shotgun, which once you unlock the charge for that and you gain the ability to launch enemies into the air, you can pretty much just shoot what can only be described as a blob of fire bullets and watch all the enemies up in the air dissolve into skeletons into mere minutes, and then watch as their bones fall down, and you're like, ah. And other than that, it's great. There is a story, but for the most part, it's just a freaking ridiculous It's just a ridiculous ride from start to finish. My goodness, talking about any one moment would be doing a disservice to every single other moment in the game, and I've played through that game I think about 3 times now, and every single time I've played through it, I've been entertained from the time I started to the time the end credits rolled around, and my goodness, it's the game you really want to play when you just want to realize just how ridiculous and wonderful games can be. So, yep, Bulletstorm for my number 2 spot. It's also the game that sparked my interest in the first-person shooters, so, extra points there.
A pretty tough genre to get into if you're not sitting there playing cookie cutter Call of Duty games, so that's good. Borderlands and Bulletstorm are good places to start when it comes to FPSs.
Yeah, we both got a fair amount of Borderlands nostalgia, and we could definitely vouch for going back to Telltale. They are surprisingly excellent adventure game in that series, Tales from the Borderlands. I gotta tell you, I wasn't really big on the concept at first, but then by the time I got to the 5th episode, and they had that affecting intro with James Blake, of all people, his music coming on in the beginning, that was some next level shit, man. I was almost crying. Can you just think about that for a second, man? Like, we're talking about these games that are just, Bulletstorm. I'm surprised you didn't mention this, Tyler. There's a sniper rifle where you can literally control the bullets in midair and guide them right into people's crotches.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Mercy kill. I remember showing that to my friend Owen, sophomore year of college, and the look on his face of sheer concentrated what? It's something that still sticks with me after all this time. And don't even get me started on the skill point you get for a mercy killing. I cringe just thinking about it.
That was rough.
Yeah. Very sensitive.
So what is your number 2 pick, Mr. Ben?
My number 2 pick would have to do with the very first music and rhythm game that really clicked with me. It wasn't necessarily the first one I played, but it was the first one where I really got to understand music as an abstract concept. It was Frequency, way back in 2002 by Harmonix, the guys you probably better know as the makers of Rock Band and all those plastic instruments that are currently wasting away in landfills. I fondly remember this was back when my dad and I were having a meal in the Rainforest Cafe. And that place actually terrified me because as part of the whole Rainforest aesthetic, they would have like these mock thunderstorms. And I was really scared of them as a kid. thunderstorms. So he thought that if I got through sitting in that cafe, it would sort of make things easier. And he promised that he would get me a game from the GameStop at that mall if I did it. So I did, and the one that stuck out of me was Frequency. I rented it before at the local Blockbuster. I really wanted it for myself, and it was really fascinating because you were playing along with the music, but like in Rock Band, it was separated into layers where you had tracks for the vocals, the bass, the drums, the sound effects. It felt like you were literally playing through the music. And it turned me on to not just other harmonics games, but a lot of other music games in general. And it really broadened my horizons in terms of musical tastes. I picked up on everything from David Bowie to Weezer to Daft Punk to Radiohead. Those games are basically the reason I became a really condescending music snob, even if I don't always show it.
So,
I wanted you to say Parappa the Rapper. Now I'm sad.
I have played them, but well, without wishing to ruin everyone's nostalgia, they just haven't aged very well. I knew going in when they were remastering the first one on PS4 that it was going to be a little dicey because, well, it's a 20-year-old game, and even when you, again, compare it to something like Frequency or, for that matter, Guitar Man, which I absolutely fucking love, it's just rather, well, basic. I know you can't really help that given it was the first of its kind, but that's kind of the rub, especially with a lot of the examples we've talked about, it being the first ones of their kind. I mean, even if you compare it with another Zelda games, I'm sure if you went back and forth between Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild, realistically, which one would be much more enjoyable to play in 2017?
Shh, you just gotta believe.
yeah,
Shh, it's gonna be okay. You just gotta believe.
that's your problem,
Oh.
Ben. You're not believing enough. Need some
Oh, I
noodles.
I've just learned to have tempered expectations. That's the trick. I learned that after years of delays for Kingdom Hearts 3. Trust me.
Now delayed till 2020.
Yeah. I'll just have to take comfort in my limited edition copy of HD 2.8 Final Chapter Prologue. It's not much, but I'll take it.
Super hyper Street Fighter Kingdom Hearts edition, etc., pronoun.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing Ken and Ryu team up with Mickey.
God. Don't even. Yeah. I don't want us to get. Well, I don't want us to get too off topic with this, but, you know, Disney does technically own Marvel, and I know they did have those really good Capcom licensed games in the past, so who knows? Anything could happen. I mean,
If I see Mickey Mouse in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, I'm coming to your house, kid.
what, to beat me up?
We're gonna have a few choice words like, "Why'd you give them the idea, man?" They're listening. They're part of
Right.
that -7. How dare you? Look what you've done.
Yeah, I
You
brought
did
this on
this.
myself.
You
I
did
mean, it was surreal enough just seeing Neko and company from The World Ends With You and Dream Drop Distance because, you know, like, OMG, two of my favorite...
I don't know if I can say that on your podcast.
What?
I forgot
What?
about that game. I love me some World Ends With You. Oh no. Oh no. It looks like my number 2 spot's a 3-way tie now. You did this.
Oh, I'm sorry. What
did.
is your three-way tie at number 2? I must ask.
Oh no, oh no. Now I want to sit there and just remember that game. Oh, you're a jerk. Oh
Thanks,
no.
Ben.
I'm
God.
sorry for triggering you twice in a single recording. I didn't plan on this.
Is there such thing as a good trigger? All right, because it's all right. So I was gonna say Fallout 3 because I really like that game and the story is fantastic. But then I remembered Persona 3. Persona 3 is like a part of me, and then I remembered The World Ends With You because of your vocabulary. What comes out of your mouth, yes, just triggers what my
I'm
memory.
sorry, I can't help it.
I'm just like, I don't think I've played that many games. Oh, The World Ends With You. Fuck, I have played that many games. God damn it. Man, that game saw me through college. Like, I couldn't put that game down. It was so damn good. Like, the story was all right, but just that gameplay, it was so good. It was hot like a knife through butter. It was tight, like, insert analogy for tightness here. It was wonderful, and I've always wanted Square to go back to that. And they're just like, oh yeah, we'll tease too. Oh yeah, buy it on the iPad. Oh no, look at this extra video. Who's this girl in red? Guess you'll never know, because we don't fucking know, and we're never gonna find out. So that was that. Oh, Square Enix has not been my friend since then. I tell you what.
Yeah.
But Fallout 3 is it's Fallout 3. What do I say? I still think it's the best Fallout game, just because it gives little fucks, but at the same time it wants you to succeed. It's like a parent. It's just like, I got my own life, kid, but I brought you into this world, so I guess I'll help you out. I'll watch over you. I'll give you a landmine every now and then, but you got to work for it, man. All right, you can't just expect handouts. It's not how that works in the wasteland. Nope. Persona 3 is still one of my goats, greatest of all times. Probably one of the reasons why I continue to give the JRPG genre a chance, because I'm trying to find something that surpasses Persona 3. Persona 5 came close, but it's just not. It needed something. I make fun of Nobi Noodle and our new member on Nobi Noodle all the time for being weeaboos, but like, I still have a soft spot in my heart for the weeb every now and then, and Persona 3 is probably the biggest piece of evidence with that. It's like, every now and then I'll boot that thing back up and I'll just be like, hey Junpei, how's it going? He's like, sup, dude? And I get lost. I get lost in that story. It is a joy. And the fact that your teammates can screw you up at any given moment is always nail biting, and I enjoy that. I like clenching my butt every time I get into a fight, hoping Junpei isn't going to use the last of our potions, and then we all wind up, hitting the reset button. Wonderful time. The PSP version addressed that, so you could give commands to your friends, and I'm like, no, man. No, I don't like that. I want everybody to think for themselves and possibly give me a chance to throw my controller into a wall. It's like, we had him on the ropes, Junpei. Why'd you screw us over, man? But, yeah, Persona 3. Wonderful time. If you're looking to get into Persona, I suggest starting with 1 or 2, but if you can't get a copy of those, 3 is your best bet. Wonderful game. Back on to you, Mr. Copter Podcast.
Yep. My number one. So, this is my number one for the reason that, while I love to death Paper Mario and Ocarina of Time on the N64, that wasn't really particularly at a time when video games became, a very solid core part of my life. I mean, video games were just, back in the day, just a thing I did, and not, just a burning passion. But my number one pick is the game that, to this day, I remember as being the game that made me realize just how amazing games have the potential to be. And it was, a game that will stay in my heart forever is Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. So, one of the like several dozen reasons that game will always hold a special place in my heart, both as an amazing game and as a game that got me into games in the first place, is, I first found out playing about the Thousand-Year Door at my good friend Ben's house, and I was like, gosh, I feel like I physically need this in my blood right now. And to my genuinely delighted surprise, on a Saturday on my 13th birthday, I ended up getting a copy of Thousand Year Door on my GameCube, and even though I had the party to go to when I first plugged it in, as soon as I was able to play a little bit of the prologue, and I was like, yep, I'm hooked. And My goodness, everything that the first Paper Mario did, the Thousand Year Door improved upon, as in my opinion, 100 times over. You got so many new. You get a whole new cast of partners that are kind of sort of similar to the ones in the first game, but at the same time they're completely distinct. And if Nintendo wants to make a bunch of money and make a bunch of people happy, they'll bring back the partners from the first two Paper Mario games, because gosh darn it, those are some of the best characters. But I mean, come on, please, Nintendo, I'm begging. Anyway, but the partners are even more of a highlight the first time, because they have even more well-defined personalities, or as well-defined as you can get in a RPG set in the Mario universe. You have Goombella, a junior at the University of Goom. Go Goombas. What an odd name for a university. You get Koops, a nervous Koopa Troopa who wants to get revenge on the dragon what ate his dad, or so he thinks. You get Madame Flurry and Madame Flurry, that sassy cloud spirit that makes me think of what I think Mae West would be if she was a video game character.
Hmm.
And let's see, there was the sweet. Also, spoilers. I probably should have started the podcast with it, but too bad for the -12 of you watching this. And you get the
That's
little
the spirit.
baby. You get the little baby Yoshi. You get to name. You get Vivian, the one of the cutest, most adorable video game characters Nintendo has ever made. You get Admiral Bobbery, a bomb with a sailor instead of the traditional bomb clockwork key on his back. You get Miss Mao, who's a sassy lady thief, and just this game. Like, even back then, when I was this my dumb 13-year-old self, this game, like, it had some surprisingly tender moments. You wouldn't think so, considering it's Mario, and all Mario games are bright and goofy, and you're like, golly, I'm having a good time, but gosh darn it, sometimes like, when you least expect it, it just hits you. Like, again, spoilers, but in order to recruit Admiral Bobbery, and in order to progress to the 5th chapter of the game, you have to help him come to terms with his wife's death. This is the thing that has happened in a Mario game. You help a widower overcome the inner demons he acquired when he first learned that his wife passed away some years ago. My goodness. And again, super spoilers. At the end of the game, he goes sailing with Cortez, the Spanish-speaking pirate ghost that you fight and then become best friends with, long story. And I think Goombella said something along the lines of, I think his soul is healed. And just, that hit me a lot harder now that I am an adult and I'm able to, think back on these things with a slightly clearer mind. But that's just one of the many things. And that's not getting into things like, the cutest girl in the world, the Vivian, being constantly verbally abused by her sisters, finally learning how to have confidence in herself, and you realize she's the best partner because she can light all of the enemies on screen on fire with one spell, and this whole game is awesome. And but one of my most favorite parts was how fourth wall breaky it was, and that you played every single battle was on a stage, an actual stage with props and an audience, and the audience was actually a central mechanic to the game. But the thing, aside from that, one of the things that stuck me up to the most was, again, super duper spoilers. Go buy the game, do yourself a favor. was, the final boss, the Shadow Queen, which, this has got to be one of the creepiest video game villains Nintendo has produced thus far in its history, because as Super Mario Wiki.com or .org or I don't know pointed out, unlike all the other villains up to that point, she doesn't really have any comedical undertones. She doesn't make jokes. The bad guy whose organization you've been fighting up to this point tries to boss her around, and then he gets zapped by lightning, and you're like, my goodness, he dead. Well, he's not dead, he's just only a talking head, but still, I remember, her presence was so intense in the game when she first wakes up from her coffin, which, I'm just starting to realize how scary she actually was. She causes an earthquake around the world and causes almost the entire planet, the Mushroom Kingdom planet, let's call it, to be covered in darkness. And it took all of the people Mario met in his journey, wishing upon the Crystal Star to give Mario enough power to take down this demon of ultimate darkness. And, well, that's not the only part I loved about that game. Just, my goodness. It's just the entire game. Well, that was one of the parts that stuck with me the most, but the whole game, I could probably, and maybe I will someday, write a book about literally every single aspect of the game, and who knows what else I could do, but just that entire game sticks with me. It was and is still a fantastic game, and it was the first game that I played over and over again just because I loved it so much, and also because it was one of the only games I owned at the time. But yeah, all of that, and it was one of the first games that made me truly realize that games can be something really special, and I'll always be thankful for that particular fact. So, Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, that is my number one game that got me into games in the first place. So, that's just me gushing. So, what do you have, Mr. Ben, as your number one game that got you into games?
Jesus. I had something completely different in mind, but now I'm going to follow up on a temptation to go off script and talk about a completely unrelated game
A script?
Well, I wrote down some speaking notes. I didn't write it down word for word.
But you just gotta feel it, man. You just gotta feel it.
You just gotta believe.
All right. I might as well. If I had to choose a single game that's going to stick with me for the rest of my days, not necessarily because it's the best or the most refined or even the most resonant, I guess, it would probably have to be Kingdom Hearts 2. See, as part of my aforementioned nostalgia trip, I've been playing through not just the final chapter prologue, but also the recent 1.5 plus 2.5 bundle that came out on PS4 recently. And yes, I'm aware that technically means Kingdom Hearts 4 came out before Kingdom Hearts 3, but that's something to have an aneurysm over for another time. Anyway, I started replaying Kingdom Hearts 2, and the moment I booted it up, just literally the last 11 years worth of emotions came flooding back all at once. That game got me through what can only be described as easily the roughest period of my life. It was just, shit was falling apart. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And, that game was basically the only thing keeping my sanity together. Now, looking back on it, I'm not stupid. I'm aware it doesn't make sense that there's that infamous tutorial where you play as Roxas, which you didn't even know about if you didn't also play that really weird card-based Chain of Memories game on the Game Boy Advance first. That it's so long, and that it essentially amounts to Jesse McCartney screaming and being angry at Christopher Lee and having a weird fixation on sea salt ice cream. Or that you're going back and forth between The Lion King 1 minute and Pirates of the Caribbean the next, and all this gobbledygook about people without hearts, nobodies, and it's just such a mess. But, damn it, I'll be damned if I wasn't crying my eyes out like a little bitch harder than almost any other game I've played. There, I admit it. I mean, just thinking about Roxas in particular is just, oh, dear Jesus. It's just, it's a lot to take in, all right? You really had to be there. Just, I mean, it practically saved me, all right? If there's anything I'm going to be grateful to the medium for, it's the fact that Kingdom Hearts 2 more or less saved my life. I'm not going to say it's going to be that way for everyone, especially once we get to Atlanticus musical numbers, which I know they're very strange. I'll admit that. But, if you got a PS4 or a PS3, you owe it to yourself to at least give 1.5 and 2.5 HD Remix a chance because, well, just give it a chance, all right? That's all I'm asking.
Oh,
There you go.
Kingdom Hearts 2, Mr. Ben's number 1. And which means the last one is Mr. Al Dente's number 1. And
I'm enjoying my time here. So before I get to my number 1, I'm gonna build it up by touching on you guys. I like your games. I do. I enjoy them. Paper Mario: 1,000-Year Door was the only Paper Mario game I had ever played up until very recently when I decided to give Super Paper Mario a shot, and that game sucked. But
Hey!
I'm sorry. It's because 1,000-Year Door spoiled me on what Paper Mario should be, and it wasn't that. So it's like, well, why would I waste my time? I'm gonna go play the game I actually do enjoy, and the game was great. The story was awesome. The computer was weird. Peach was hot. Vivian perplexed me because a friend of mine had told me that I guess she's not a girl outside of the Americas, and I'm like, shut your dirty mouth. And
that's actually
she's not. Vivian's a dude
true.
in Japan.
Vivian is, well, to be proper, she is apparent, according to Did You Know Gaming, which seems to know quite a lot. Vivian is apparently a transgender woman, or at least the closest Mario equivalent up until that point.
Oh.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, so it's like the whole backstory with Poison from Capcom's Final Fight games.
I literally don't know any of what you just said, but I'm going to assume so.
It was a similar dust-up over gender identity because, like, when those games first came out, the Japanese government freaked out because apparently you were beating up on a chick as a regular grunt, but Capcom never went on record identifying her as a straight-up woman. So...
And I have lived my life happier ever since. But I digress. The whole thing came up is because I was really enjoying my time with Guilty Gear. And there's a character in Guilty Gear, which is this anime fighting game where this chick is actually a dude, and that's when he brought up Vivian, and I'm just like, stop it. You're destroying childhood me. Just stop it. Let me play my game. Just leave it alone.
About this is Bridget, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Bridget, the yo-yo toting nun-esque suit wearing, bear wielding girl boy, and she's one of my favorite characters. And that whole debacle came up, and everyone was just like, "That's so weird." And I'm just like, "You shut your dirty whore mouth." But Kingdom Hearts 2, I very much enjoyed Kingdom Hearts 1 because I was in Disney the time it was being released. They had it in this room where you could go and play a little bit of Destiny Islands and some combat. I had no idea what the heck this was, but it was some anime kid hanging out with Goofy and Donald, and I'm like, hot dang, I love me some crossover, and Goofy is really rad, so I'll play this, and I like anime at the time, so why not? I fell in love with the game. 2 is the pinnacle of Kingdom Hearts for me. That the combat system, fan freaking tastic. Didn't really care that much for the story, and every game afterward just kind of lost me. That story is a I don't even really have a good word to describe what I think of that story. It's garbage. I apologize, but
No, it's
it's the unversed, it's the heartless, it's the nobodies, it's the dream eaters. I'm like, good God, pick one. They're like, oh, look at this bald dude. Oh, he wants to start a war, and everybody has to go and fight this war. And I'm like, I remember the days when Sora's like, I want to find my friends, and Donald's like, and Goofy's like, go hook, and that's all I needed. I got it. I haven't looked back. I'm remembering them fondly. Dream Drop Distance was very good. I'll get that out of the way. It was a very good return to form, I think. And then they're just like, world ends with you, and I'm like, stop punching me in my feels, you asshole. So that's it. I'm very happy. I'm satisfied. I'll probably give 3 a chance when it comes out because I did very much enjoy Big Hero 6, and they're just like, Big Hero 6, and I'm like, oh well, guess I'm back. So we'll see where that's going. As for my number 1, so I guess you guys were Nintendo dudes growing up, which is cool. A lot of my friends were Nintendo. I grew up on Sega because my parents are just like, yeah, you liked that one thing we bought you, so we'll just do that, I guess, every now and then if you earn it. So I had a Dreamcast, and it was around this time where I didn't really like, games were neat. Games were fun. Games were things I did when I had nothing else to do and no one could hang out and I had nothing to do for homework or there's nothing good on TV, so I'll pop in Sonic. But I had a Dreamcast and I had like no games for this thing until I don't think it was a KB Toys, just some random store I popped in. Maybe it was a Toys R Us and I saw this pirate anime dude on a box and I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. I've got some allowance. I'll give this game a shot. And it was Skies of Arcadia. And Skies of Arcadia was probably the driving force behind why this body I currently inhabit is still doing gaming as a hobby. Because that game kept me around so hard with its story and its combat system. I can't even say the combat system. It was a turn-based, like, oh no, it's Pokemon almost. You fight the elements with the elements. Who's weak to what? But it's the story. I don't know what it was about that story, but just you're a pirate in the sky and you're given the poop to this evil empire who wants to destroy your dad and your home and everything you love and also maybe steal your treasure and your girlfriend, but you aren't going to let it happen, gosh darn it, because you're a sky pirate and that's what you do. You give the bad guys the poop. And we did. We just, I don't know what it was. This game's storytelling was so top notch that I would have friends over and we would sit there. We would buy our favorite flavor Sun Chips and we would sit there. One person would take the controller and we would just go. We were treating this game like a movie and we didn't want to stop. I wish Sega was still that good. I think Sega just published the game. It was some place called Overworks or something that had made the game. And it was so good. It was so good. People petitioned the main character to get in that stupid Sonic racing game. And it worked. And I'm like, give me a sequel. Actually, don't. Because then you'll ruin the first one. Because I don't trust you. This is precious. At one point, I had owned 7 copies of this game because my girlfriend at the time was also extremely obsessed with it. That's how we met. And every time we'd find a copy in a store, we'd just buy it. Because like that game deserved owning more than once. And I had 2 shadow boxes hanging on a wall with this game just sitting in it. Friends were like, you going to play that? I'm like, don't you dare touch that. I'll take that off the wall and I will beat you with it. And then I will regret what I've just done. You don't touch that game, sir. Besides, I still have one under the TV. You can play that one. It's I don't know. To this day, it's probably my greatest of all time, greatest of all time, and it did good. It's like, play a game, get lost, and I sure did. So if you are looking for an RPG that still more or less holds up today from the folks at Sega, something to play on your Dreamcast or that little orange, little purple, whatever color you bought it in box, GameCube, you owe it to yourself to go spend $110 on this game and just enjoy it. And then finally get that question answered as to where this pirate dude showed up in my Sonic racing game. Where the hell is he from? That's where he's from. And you love it. For real. Yes. That's my story.
So, Skies of Arcadia.
And I thought the two of us were enthusiastic about our number one picks. I don't know if you heard about this, but I read that Sega actually was looking to revive some of their dormant IPs. So, maybe
they did renew that IP. Yes, I was all over it when it was wandering around the interwebs, and I'm like, oh my god, here it comes! Oh my god, here it comes! And nothing came, and I'm like, well, that's typical Sega. So at this point, I've learned to just expect nothing and be surprised. So I don't know if they're ever going to touch it again, and if they do, I'm gonna go find my local GameStop. And I'm just gonna sit there in a tent for like a year and be like, "What are you doing, kid?" I'm waiting for Skies of Arcadia 2. It's coming out in 2020. Yeah, I'm just gonna sit here and wait.
Yeah, it's like Zero Punctuation once famously said in an E3 video a few years ago. A film starring Morgan Freeman will tell you that hope is your shield against life's trials and tribulations. But the gaming industry has taken it and shoved it up our collective asses so many times, it's better we start leaving it at home. So yeah, I did.
Yahtzee is not wrong. He knows well what he discusses, and it's a sad, sorry state of affairs the game industry is in today. But I guess us gamers are just kind of used to getting poo smeared on our faces that we're just willing to take whatever, because we know time heals all wounds, and eventually we'll play a game.
Yeah. So. Unless it's being drop distance, in which case the time opens up a fuckload more wounds, and you start thinking to yourself, I never thought a plot involving Leonard Nimoy and time travel could actually get more nonsensical than J.J. Abrams' Star Trek reboot. Jesus Christ.
See, I would think that. I would totally think that. However, I would be too up in my face in The World Ends With You to remember thinking that. Because then I'll be like, I'll play some Dream Drop Distance, ... I'm going to play some World Ends With You, and then I'll just kind of forget. So,
yeah.
The better game.
So, and that has been our collective trip down memory lane, and that brings us right around to the end of this particular recording of the Pumpkin Copter Cast. I hope all of you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe. I don't want to beg, but, I'm begging.
Please.
Yep. Yeah, you just gotta believe.
Just gotta believe, my friend.
And, yep. And be sure to, and when you're done doing that, be sure to check out Nobi Noodle and their YouTube channel, where they do all manner of things involving cosplay, involving things I don't understand, because that's out of my realm of expertise.
Your favorite costume toting, video game playing, and anime talking edgelords over here on Nobi Noodle. We do the thing so you don't have to. We'll dress it up, make it look pretty. Follow us Facebook, Twitter, at Nobi Noodle, at Brosona3FES. Check us out on Twitch. Check us out on other things, like maybe Instagram. Who knows? Your favorite platform of choice. We're probably there.
Yep, and if for some reason you're crazy enough, feel free to follow me on the Twitters at TGorman83, where I occasionally say good words, and also post links to my YouTube, so, it might be worth it if you're crazy, like I am. But, yep, this has been the Pumpkin Copter Cast, a good old podcast about video games. I've been TGorman83. This has been Ben.
Goodbye,
Pleasure speaking with you, everyone.
And this has been Mr. Big Al Dente.
I know words. I know the best words.
And hopefully the three of us will see you soon. Goodbye, everybody.
I
Bye,
would
everyone.
see you around.